Fantastic. So as Megan said, my name is Debbie Arnold, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. And by this time, I have worked in a variety of different settings with lots of different folks. And I have to say that I learn something with each individual and family that I get to connect with. And I just feel like the cognitive empowerment program has really been a fantastic setting for me, and I've really enjoyed, getting to know this program. And today we're talking about setting smarter goals to incorporate more exercise into your life. I want to say that I am not an exercise guru, but exercise figures really prominently in our lifestyle interventions at the Cognitive Empowerment Program. And we're seeing a lot of evidence being reported that more physical exercise is really associated with better brain health. And so I know that sometimes for myself, exercising more can really be kind of a drag. It's not easy to go from inertia to more activity. So as a lifestyle change, I wanted to talk about kind of how to set yourself up for success. So at the Cognitive Empowerment Program, exercise is among the other interventions that we're also training our folks to, the mind diet guidelines, the live well sessions, coping with changes in our brain function and planning ahead for the future, our functional independence classes with our occupational therapists, Tracy and Maureen, and our neuropsychologists training our folks to some strategies to compensate for changing brain function. But today I'm really focused on how do we get more physical exercise in? And for some reason, there we go. So first, let's make the case. What does physical exercise really have to do with cognitive function? And for that matter, with mental health. We have all heard, more or less for years that what's good for the heart is good for the brain, right? We're pumping fresh blood. The brain is the biggest consumer of oxygen in our body. But let's go a little bit deeper. So, your brain on exercise. I'm not going to read every single one of these tiny prints, but just looking on either side of this sweaty Betty, here where she's holding the barbells, on one side, we see that exercise really encourages your pituitary gland to release endorphins. Endorphins are the body's naturally occurring opiates. This is what's responsible if you've ever heard of the runner's high. I know my sister turned her ankle and she wasn't able to run, and boy, did she miss it. She really became kind of cranky without that. And then on the other side of the other barbell, exercise helps us to reduce our sensitivity to stress and how susceptible we are to depression and anxiety. And then across the top there, we also have a discussion of the temporal lobe. So where your temples are, but on the inside, that's the part of your brain responsible for storing sensory memories. And a lot, I would say the majority of the folks that we see with mild cognitive impairment have the amnestic type. That is, they're having difficulty with storing memories. So exercise can help us with that. And then up there, the signs that, the symbols that appear on a calculator, we can improve our learning and mental performance with regular exercise. And we think it does help to prevent cognitive decline and inoculate our brains a little bit against aging and help with some of the decline, keeping mild cognitive impairment mild. So on this slide, we have a longitudinal study, a 25-year study that's pretty long in the world of research, found that higher cardiovascular fitness was associated with better verbal memory and reaction time. And then in the middle, twice weekly resistance training impacted the response inhibition processes. This is all a lot of jargon, but inhibition is important because that's the filter, right? What crosses my mind would otherwise just come out my mouth. But this allows me to have some judgment and not say everything I think all the time. And then also the patients with psychiatric disorders who practiced yoga or walked had significantly improved mood and decreased anxiety. Not surprisingly, the yoga group did really well. And Megan teaches our yoga class for anyone that's new around here. So if you have watched some of our recordings or live webinars before, you probably have seen this model of change. This is the stages of change model, also called the trans-theoretical model. And what this model does is just really, it's just a visual to talk, some changes that happen in our lives happen to us. Other changes we intend to make. So this is a model that represents how we come to make intentional changes. So we're focusing here on decision making. And, it seems very complicated, and really it is a little bit complicated when we try and make intentional changes in our lives. It's not like flipping a switch, right? Changes in our behavior, especially habitual behavior that's established already, is really a process. And this is a continual cyclical process. So we're breaking it down into its component parts here. Pre-contemplation can be a very long phase. And especially when we're talking about something like, I'm going to exercise more. I mean, we might spend months thinking, I should really exercise more. I know exercise is good for me. It's good for my heart. It's good for my brain. I should really exercise more. The complication that comes here is that sometimes the talk inside our own head is a little bit counterproductive. We may say, I know I should exercise more, but fill in the blank. Or I'm calling myself names. I'm too lazy. I'm too this. I'm too that. So we really have to tune into those messages and try to overcome our negativity. And then beyond I think I ought to do this, and I'm thinking about it for a while, we come to this place of, contemplation. Contemplation really is, it might not look like I'm doing anything, but I'm building readiness. I may appear to still be sitting on the couch scrolling on my phone, but if you look closely, I'm learning about my options. I'm checking out the schedule of classes at the Y, or I'm trying to, figure out how I'm going to get to the senior center. And as you're contemplating building more exercise into your life, please, please, please check with your primary care provider. Ask for their suggestions, what the appropriate kind of exercise or reasonable goals for you might be, and make sure that you're really medically cleared for the exercise that you want to do. So then we get to determination. So determination you can think of as actual goal setting. And this is where these smarter goals that I'm talking about can probably make the biggest difference. So let's talk about what do we mean by smarter goals. So smarter goals actually come from the business world. Business consultants in about the 1980s developed this acronym to help employees to define and ultimately meet work objectives. So SMART goals are a way to just systematically and thoughtfully approach goal setting and objectives. But this model has really come to extend far beyond office culture. And the reason is because it really seems effective. It works. And, if you consider a business owner has, a general goal of, next quarter, we're going to make more money, right? It doesn't really identify where they are and where they want to get to. It doesn't say anything about how much income they want to bring in next quarter. And it doesn't say anything about how they're going to improve their income either. So a vague objective does very little to provide a roadmap for success. It's not a solid plan. Similarly, with fitness, a fitness goal that's like, oh, I'm going to get healthier, it's kind of too vague. It doesn't really provide a useful blueprint for positive change. So let's really break down this acronym SMARTER and see what it's really talking about. Okay, so first, it's specific and measurable. Specific measurable goals offer us both a spark that we need for initial motivation, and they also hold us accountable as we go forward, right? It's specific in that it's considering the current state and the target for the change or the improved status I want in the future. And that's really important. I don't have to know exactly where I'm going to end up, and I may need to adjust that in the future, but I do need a target to aim for. And as far as being measurable, that's exactly what it sounds like. I have to be able to quantify my progress. I need to select a unit of measurement. How am I going to track my activity? Am I going to count minutes? Am I going to track my heart rate? Do I want to count my steps or the miles that I'm walking or running? And not just a unit of measurement, I need to also decide how I'm going to keep track of this. Am I going to use a physical chart? Am I going to use a fitness tracker like an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring or some kind of technology? Or I might just use a journal. My daughter had a bullet journal and she colored it in beautifully, and it had little boxes that she would color in as she did her activities. And it was really a visual representation of how it was going. So what's a good example of a smarter goal? I'm thinking I might sign up to be on the CEP team for the Alzheimer's walk in October. But since I get out of breath after only walking a short distance, I'm going to check with my PCP and see if I can increase my endurance. What I'm going to ask them, is it safe for me? I'm thinking I will walk briskly for 20 minutes, at least 5 times a week, at least 5 days a week. And I prefer to walk outdoors if the weather permits, but if it's, 104 degrees or it's raining, I know that there are some walking videos on YouTube, and I could do those if I can't get outdoors. So I'm going to check with my doctor to make sure that that's okay. And then I already have my pocket calendar from my time in CEP, so I will just record on my calendar, when I have completed my walk each day. So that's not a heavy lift. And at CEP, we also encourage our folks to use smarter goal setting beyond exercise, to have specific measurable goals like I'm going to attend a support group for an hour once a month. I'm going to meet with an elder law specializing attorney to draft my essential documents before my birthday. Or I'm going to speak to the person I've designated to be my healthcare agent and make sure that they agree to that role. And I'll do that before I see them at Thanksgiving. So smarter goals are great for exercise, but they really are effective in our lives in general. So if you're new to consistent exercise, I'm moving on from our specific and measurable to our attainable and relevant letters. If you're new to consistent exercise, it's probably not advisable or realistic or safe to plan, I'm going to run a marathon next month because I'm new to this. And if I set goals that are too high or too quick, I'm likely to give up. And I also am really increasing the risk for injury. Whereas setting goals that are within an attainable or achievable range really help to ensure that we can maintain our motivation and also our safety. If I get injured, then I'm going to be sidelined from exercising at all. I'll need time to recover. That'll really be a setback for me. So having an attainable or achievable goal makes more sense. Likewise, it's a big enough change that I do need to push myself harder than usual, but it's realistic, right? Attainable or achievable is realistic enough, yet challenging also. And a relevant smart fitness goal means thinking about the ends you're trying to achieve and finding the path to get there, right? In my example, the end or my reason, another R word, is to participate in the Alzheimer's walk. I'm in training to try to do that and enjoy doing it. So if your reason for for increasing your step count or incorporating exercise is overall fitness, then walking is a good activity, right? I'll burn some extra calories, it relieves some stress, I'll have more energy and some other benefits. So I'll be on track if that's my goal. But if my goal is more increasing my flexibility because, when I play on the floor, with my pets or my kids, I really have trouble getting up and I need, to really think about my flexibility, or I reach for something on a high shelf and oh my goodness, I just feel stiff. I'm the Tin Man. Then my goal is increased flexibility. Increasing my step count or walking so many days a week is probably not going to get me there if flexibility is my end game. So a more relevant goal would, focus on incorporating more yoga or stretching into my days. So it has to be relevant. And finally, time bound, right? Setting a time frame, even if you need to adjust it later, having like a date on the calendar that I can circle by which I plan to have achieved my goal is really important. It means I'll be able to see incremental changes along the way. I'll know that I'm going in the right direction. And this helps to keep me motivated too, because I'm seeing some progress. There's structure. And if my goals are more challenging than I anticipated, then that really is an opportunity also. It presents the chance to look at and consider the barriers that I'm facing. Maybe I am having trouble carving out time, or maybe I just don't feel motivated. It's hard for me to hold on to that picture in my head of doing the Alzheimer's walk, and I just need something more immediate. I need a sooner goalpost. So setting myself up for success might be putting some daily reminders in my smartphone, or it might be reprioritizing other obligations. And we know that short-term goals work best for most people. And we also know there's research that says if exercise is the activity that we're trying to increase in our lives, doing that earlier in our day before we get busy with other things, it really tends to be more successful. We also know that if we get to the end of the day and we're tired, we're, winding up the day, and then we go, oh, fiddlesticks, or whatever your word is. I really neglected to go for that walk today. I didn't fit it in. I'm going to do some exercise now, right? It's 10 o'clock at night and I'm going to run around my house for a while. That's not a great idea. Vigorous exercise before bed tends to really impede restful sleep. And we know that restful sleep is especially important for brain health. So we chalk that up to, well, that's, if my goal is walking 5 days a week, this will be a day I didn't do it, and I'll just need to really make that commitment to do it, set my reminder for the morning, leave my walking shoes, right there by the door or whatever. And another thing that can really help is having a partner to keep you accountable, right? An accountability partner, a friend or a relative that you might go walking with, or you just call each other up and say, I'm just letting you know I'm going for my walk. Did you walk yet? And sometimes that might be a personal trainer or a fitness coach. It could be a physical therapist. Medicare does pay for physical therapy when we need it, so that's a good deal. But the the E and the R are to evaluate and readjust. So it's smarter. And being flexible enough to make adjustments because it's not a perfect plan to begin with is just really being good to yourself. So that's our acronym of SMARTER. I was really surprised and included this slide because I found this really interesting, that although body image changes as we age, it's not exactly in the way that you would think. So body image has to do with our perceptions and attitudes about our body and how it appears. It might be positive or negative, or I might feel strong, I might feel confident, sexy, or I might have, some shame. I knew someone she said her mom would always ask her when walking down the street, she would compare her body and in a whisper that was too loud to be a whisper. What is my bottom bigger or smaller than that lady's? And that's human. We do compare ourselves to others. But body image, as we age, our satisfaction with our body actually stays the same, or it might, we might be less dissatisfied with our bodies as we age, which I found really interesting since, we're carrying weight in different places and we might not be as toned as we were, 20 years ago. But what increases seems to be body appreciation. We accept and we respect our physical selves. We give ourselves, credit for being vital, active, and strong, and especially when we recover from setbacks. And body awareness is a related concept, more associated with satisfaction and stability about how we think about our bodies, and makes us less vulnerable to the messages that we get from the media about how being young and thin is the gold standard. So that's great news because we can really intentionally cultivate this too. And meditative practices like yoga and Tai Chi that incorporate breath work and really sinking into awareness of our bodily sensations are really important, right? So mindfulness, just paying attention to the present moment on purpose and without judgment, really just breaking things down into bits when you're walking, really experiencing how it feels when your foot hits the pavement and then springs off and you're on your other foot. Really being mindful and right there and present is really important, and it's very good for our brain health and for our overall sense of well-being. Also strongly correlated with our self-esteem. I'm doing what I can do for my own well-being, right? So I really liked that, and I really just wanted to share that, even though strictly speaking, it wasn't on the topic of smarter goals. But here at the Cognitive Empowerment Program, we emphasize the importance of keeping a positive outlook. You may be experiencing changes, but these are some changes that you really can be in the driver's seat about. Not all of the changes have to be happening to you. You get to be the architect of how you're going to go about incorporating more exercise into your life. And you can implement these new strategies. So accept the feelings that show up, but try not to get stuck in negative ones. We also have some sessions recorded on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, on the topics of resilience and acceptance, and I encourage you to watch those as well. And then just think about how you'll go about beginning today. Take a moment to appreciate your body. Give yourself credit for being here today, for taking time out to really consider thoughtfully how you're going to take care of fitting exercise in. Try combining fitness with some other goals. We know that social engagement is kind of the secret sauce of the Cognitive Empowerment Program, right? Megan's just talked about community. So try combining fitness with being social. Walk with a friend or attend a class at a senior center or someplace. And be intentional about your routines. Routine is soothing, it's consistent, and it's very good for consistency when you're trying to show up for yourself. And please notice your self-talk. Don't believe everything you hear in terms of messages to yourself. Try and speak to yourself in positive and encouraging tones as you do with friends, right? If you miss a day of exercise, give yourself a pep talk so that you don't miss tomorrow, rather than beating yourself up for it. Okay. And here are some places you can turn to learn more about that model of change or how smart fitness goals can help you to get healthier, or even about our body image. And that's what I've got.